Hello my friends, I'm going to show you how to culture mycelium at home in your kitchen. And we're going to grow it on rice, barley, wood plugs, and sawdust. And first thing you need to do is prepare lids for your mason jars. Preparing the lids for the mycelium, you need to punch a hole in the lids. And punching is much safer than drilling. Here I'm using a Phillips screwdriver, and I'm going to punch into a block of soft wood, and it doesn't take a lot to knock a hole in, and you can soften the edges that way also. You can put more than one hole. I laid out a line so that I can hit the center of that hole very easily. Like that. Edges are softened. So I need 7 of these. There's 7 mason jars. Will fit into 7 mason jars will fit into my pressure can. Can't be talking while I'm hammering. So you hit the hole, curl it, it'll start flaring those cut edges outward. A little tap, you have soft edges. And you can get away with using used lids. After you get all these lids punched, the next thing that you do is stuff that with some pillow stuffing, and you want to compress that, push it through, and pull it out the bottom, and that'll stay locked in there. That's all you need. This will allow the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide. The mycelium takes in oxygen and expels carbon dioxide, same as us. Okay, take a fluff of that, squeeze it into a tight, compact ball there, and pull it in. And there you can see, just like that. And once your lids are prepared, then you're going to fill your jars up. And I pre-cook, this is barley, I pre-cook my rice and barley, and I let it dry. There's still moisture in it, and it's kind of loose, the texture. And I'm going to leave about 1 inch to 1.5 inch head space in the jar. Take a lid and a ring, seal it. This goes into the pressure cooker in a few inches of water. Now I'm going to put about 2 inches of water in the pressure cooker, and going to cap these with aluminum, and then it's ready to go in. The purpose of the pressure cooker is to sterilize everything, including the jars. This has already been pre-cooked, so it's moist, but caution, you do not want any standing water in the jar. That's setting it up for spoilage. Mold likes to grow into the covering the jars with aluminum foil. And the reason for this is the environment inside that pressure canner is going to be raining on top of these jars. And continuously dripping on here will wick its way down into the jar and make it too moist, too wet in there. And we want to have it moist but no standing water. I'm going to leave it in the pressure canner for 60 to 90 minutes. When you use the pressure canner, you want to have the jars raised above the bottom. You don't want them sitting directly on the bottom. That creates a hot spot. So here I have a cylinder that raises them up. If you don't have that, I've often used butter knives that I would crisscross on the bottom, and that would keep them off of the bottom from getting too hot. Canner is full. There's about 2 to 3 inches up the side of the bottom of the jars. The aluminum foil is over the top to keep water from dripping onto the top, and we're ready to close it up. We're going to turn it on and leave it cook for 60 to 90 minutes. What I have here is some shiitake, or these are oyster mushrooms, and we're going to make a culture from these. These came from a grocery store. And I have here also liquid mycelium, and it came in a package with a alcohol wipe for sterilization. This has the liquid mycelium. This is shiitake and the needle. And we're going to need to sterilize the work area. I'm going to use gloves. I have alcohol and the knife that we're going to use and the cutting board. The pressure cooker has been left off. I turned it off last night after about an hour and a half of cooking, and I let it cool down. So now this is at room temperature. Everything that is inside the pressure cooker is sterile. There's a difference between being sterile and being clean. Sterile means that you killed all the fungus, bacteria, mold, whatever could be in there. So we need to maintain a sterile environment for growing the mycelium. Okay, what I'm going to do is sterilize my work area. I'm going to use gloves, and my hands are clean, but they're not sterile. It's easier to sterilize these gloves than it is to sterilize your hands. So that's why doctors, I guess, use the gloves. Okay, the mycelium that I have, the liquid mycelium I purchased, it came with the needle, came with the syringe, and also a wipe. So that wipe I don't think I'm going to use. What I have here is alcohol, and I'm going to use this to do my sterilization. Okay, I have paper towel here. It's pretty strong alcohol. It says use it in well-ventilated area. So maybe I'll be on the floor after this. Okay, this is my knife. And this cutting board is going to be my workspace. So I can identify that as being clean. Syringe. Needle we won't open yet. So that's all clean. Now, Once I open this, then everything inside is now exposed to the air. But the jars themselves are sealed and they're sterile inside. Okay, these jars inside and out were sterile. The water that's dripping is sterile. And I'm trying to select, those were rice, this is barley, and here we have dowel rods. Okay, now we need to inoculate. So we'll prep the needle. Okay, this is all sterile, other than air touching it, and I'm sure there's things that float in the air. Okay, now I'm going to use this for all four. So I'm going to divide this into 4 sections. I'm poking this through the fiber and spraying this in different directions. Okay, these are done, and what I'm going to do then is disperse this. Standing water is bad for the culture. You don't want any standing water in this. Okay, these last two we're going to put the mycelium from the oyster mushrooms. This is not sterile, so me touching this, my hands are not sterile either. But right here we're going to part from the sterile environment because we want to use this mycelium that's on here. So I'm going to remove the tops of some of these, and I'll cook that. I love mushrooms. So none of that will go to waste. And I'm taking the thicker ones . And what I want to do here is basically peel this away. Okay, these smaller pieces here, they're not sterile, but they're fairly clean. I removed most of the outside. This, like I said, this is where we're breaking from the sterile environment. Okay, now I'm going to take half of this . Put into one jar. The open time was minimum. I'll mix this around. And the same with this one. minimum time open, minimum exposure to the air, and mix this around. Okay, now we're going to label these 2 as oyster mushrooms, and the other 5 will be labeled shiitake. Okay, next thing, after these are labeled, I'm going to put these underneath my sink where it's cool and dry, and let the culture grow for about 2 weeks, and we'll come back and check on the progress at that time.
This is day 3, and you can see this is the cutting from the oyster mushroom, and you can see how the pieces are getting fluffy, like hairy. So this is taking off real well. The liquid mycelium, I'm still waiting to see indication from those, and possibly I'm not seeing anything yet because it got squirted into like the middle of the area, and it would be much smaller pieces. This is larger chunks, so you can see it developing real quickly.
This is 5 days, and this is the oyster mushroom. This is from the cutting of the oyster, and it is pretty packed, so that could be already used. This is the inoculation, and you can see it growing in there. And the cutting from the mushroom had a pretty good head start. These are all growing. What is not growing is on this sawdust, and this is a mistake that I made. I wasn't paying attention to where the sawdust came from. This came from me turning my flutes on the lathe, and I turned those out of cedar. And as you know, cedar is a rot resist, and this is why. It inhibits the growth of mold and the mycelium. So I'm going to let it sit longer and just see if anything will materialize in there. But both the oyster mushroom and the inoculation from the syringe, the liquid mycelium, nothing happening there. But you could see here, this was not the most sterile method because I did open the lid up and threw the cutting in, but it took off really well. Here is the oyster mycelium, and you can see here how full it is, and putting the chunks of the mushroom stem in there made a head start over the shiitake. That was the liquid mycelium. Here is the shiitake, and you can see how it's behind, but it's growing pretty good. This is the shiitake. Yep, shiitake. And this is the mix of the dowel rods and what was left over the barley. Here is also shiitake. This is 2 weeks now, 14 days. And it's same with this, shiitake. So putting the chunks in gave a pretty good head start. The only downfall is you're taking a chance when you open the lid, you lose your sterile environment. But you can see here there's
relatively minimal cost to get your mycelium, and you take a good chance of getting a good harvest out of that. Okay, what's disappointing was the sawdust, and the only reason why is this was cedar, and I'm not thinking. Cedar is one of those rot resist woods, and both the oyster and the shiitake did nothing in the cedar. So cedar contains something that inhibits the growth of bacteria and or fungus or whatever would cause wood to rot. So you need to use a wood that's mushrooms can grow on. Now the dowel rods, those are birch. But if you were using sawdust, oak is probably one of the good ones. A lot of the mushrooms require oak. Depending on what mushrooms you're using or trying to grow the mycelium, you can look up on the charts and see which woods are best for that particular mushroom. And oak is in there with a lot of the different mushrooms. So cedar, I don't think you have anything to grow on those. This has been 16 days, and here is the oyster mushroom or mycelium, and this is from the cuttings from the stems of the oyster. And here, this is the syringe from the shiitake, and this is on dowel rods and some barley. The ones from the syringe, I'm going to leave another week. And of course, as I said before, it doesn't grow on cedar. So those will be dumped. But right now this one's ready to be used. Oyster mushroom sauteed with a slice of bacon and butter.
Thanks for watching, my friends. Bye-bye.